Today, hosting this afternoon's question and answer session and interview. Please make them both feel very welcome. Martin Rowe and our very special guest, Derren Brown.
Hello. Well, a very good afternoon. Hello, everybody. Sorry we're a little bit late. We've come direct from the engine room.
Yes, it's exciting if you get a chance. Actually, I don't suppose you can get down there, because it's amazing. Runs the entire length of the ship, and felt a bit like the Queen, so it was nice.
Yes, it's the way that, you know, when you come onto these ships, you've only done this twice. This is in your second cruise, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah. But it's lovely, isn't it? I guess some of you're probably a mix of people that have done a few cruises and a few that have maybe just here and never done it before. How many of you just never cruised before like this at all? Come just to see me. That's so lovely. It's so nice. I've heard a few people say that, and it's just the loveliest thing. So thank you very much if that's the case. Especially seeing as I know we haven't ended up stopping everywhere we wanted to because of these winds. So it's really amazing to think that you would do that and be happy with that. Yeah, it's amazing. It's just the loveliest, friendliest group of people. You're all really lovely. The staff are all really lovely. The crew and crew, I suppose is the correct term, not staff. Well, and the staff. The staff are horrible. The crew are lovely. It's just amazing. It's just such a lovely, friendly environment. So I did this a couple of years ago on the Aurora, and just had such a great time. So come back again. Arcadia's a bit nicer, I think. So you're on the right one.
And you say you almost like being treated like the Queen. It's lovely to have everyone sort of fawning over you, isn't it? Because did you realise that, you know, sort of everybody here was coming specifically, you know, to see your wonderful person?
Well, the first time I got, because on the previous, on the Aurora, I just got offered in an email, you know, would you like to do a gig on a cruise ship? So yeah, that sounds fun. Never done that before, so I presume, you know, there'd be lots of acts, and I'd be one of them. And then it turned out that once I said yes, they then advertised it as a Derren Brown cruise, which was a bit frightening. I thought, God, there's going to be 2,000 fans, and I'll be on a boat and I won't be able to get away. And it was amazing. It was such a treat. Yeah, it's quite a nice little. It's just a lovely little treat. So thank you very much for doing that.
Well, it's absolutely lovely to have you. Who got something signed by Derren yesterday? I've got to say, thank you so much for doing that book signing yesterday, because there were so many people. I mean, the whole venue was absolutely jam-packed. It was marvellous.
And bless you, especially those of you that were hanging around for an hour and a half or whatever it was till the very end. Thank you for that. There was a lot of waiting around. Sorry, thank you.
So obviously, you know, we've seen you on TV, we've seen your television specials, but kind of originally, you know, way back when, you weren't even going to be a magician, were you? You kind of had ideas of maybe going into hypnotism originally.
Well, yeah, I was studying law and German at Bristol University, and realised very early on I didn't want to be a lawyer or a German, as it turned out. And I saw a hypnotist in my first year who did a really good show, and it was not embarrassing people. It was kind of grown up and you know, wasn't an embarrassing show. So I learned how to do that, and I decided that was going to be what I was going to do. So I spent the whole of my first year learning that, and put on a show at the end of my first year, which was a terrible show thinking back on it, but it was the first kind of attempt at doing that. And then I started doing close-up magic and sleight of hand and that kind of thing that you see kind of at the table in front of you, that kind of magic. And that was that. And then for 10 years, I graduated and then lived in Bristol for another 10 years and was doing magic around tables in restaurants and at people's parties and that kind of thing. And I just earned a living doing that, and it was lovely. And then I'd written a couple of books for magicians and established my name in that world, in that sort of fraternity. And then when a TV production company were looking for somebody to do some sort of mind-reading thing on television, there's some people know David Blaine, the American guy who'd created a big splash, and I think I sort of owe it partly to him, because I think because of that there was an interest in finding new magicians and people here. So this mind-reading thing came up, and because I was one of the few people that was kind of in that area doing that kind of thing, my name got brought up, and then it all kind of fell into place.
So obviously you started off as a hypnotist, then you did close-up magic. How did you get involved with the kind of the mind reading, mind control, all this neuro-linguistic programming and all of this? How did that sort of skills develop?
Well, it was just this kind of movement from one to the other. So the hypnosis came first, so that gave me an interest in sort of suggestion and influence and all the rest of it. I just found it so fascinating, and I think it is, and it's a shame because most of the time you see hypnosis and it's just making people I remember seeing one guy, who's inviting people up on stage and saying, no, look, I'm not going to embarrass you. It's really important that if you come up here, it's like you're a guest in my home, and I want you to trust me, and I'm not going to make you do anything stupid. We're not here to laugh at you. It's a fascinating process, so please, I want you to trust me and sleep. When you wake up, I have a 50-foot penis, and you will be dancing on it. So that's the trouble, is that most of the time those shows end up like that. So it is a really interesting thing, and it does tend to get degraded. So that's how I began, was just with a real fascination for hypnosis, and then but then doing the magic. Well, I think what it was is that to be a hypnotist full time, you have to get into that kind of embarrassing area, because you often just end up at those kind of gigs. So I started doing the close-up magic because that was something I could do in pubs and clubs and anywhere, where I didn't want to be doing hypnosis. I was just doing hypnosis for students, where I could kind of sort of lecture a bit about it and have questions and answers and so on. And so I was doing these kind of two things, magic and hypnosis, and I suppose my interest just naturally landed sort of between the two. So the magic I was doing just had this sort of leaning towards sort of psychological techniques or psychological sort of effects or tricks or ideas, and I kind of wanted to combine the two, because I wasn't, I was always doing one or the other. So yeah, so it kind of just led to this slightly more specialized route, which technically is called mentalism, but it's there are more people doing it now, I think, probably since I've started doing it. When I started doing it, there were maybe 4 people that I knew who did it, and then because there aren't that many people doing it, you make of it what you will. So in a way, a lot of stage mediums could technically be called mentalists. Uri Geller could technically be called a mentalist, and a magician doing a magic trick but with a sort of mind-reading theme could also be called a mentalist. So it doesn't really mean much, only that you're taking this kind of mind-related theme. So yeah, so I found my way of doing it. There weren't many others, so I didn't really have any role models per se, so I just found my own kind of route, and now that's led to what I'm doing now.
So do you consider yourself a magician or a conjurer or a mentalist? What sort of title do you put on yourself?
I try and avoid it, because I think it's a very nice thing if what you do just becomes who you are, just becomes your name. So if I say I'm this, or I'm a magician, or I'm a then it's sort of, people may not accept me doing a documentary on X over there, because hang on, you're the guy that does that, so why should we accept you doing that? So it's quite nice just being Derren Brown, and then whatever people want to, and then over the years I can kind of allow that to include different things. So, but if people ask, I would just say a kind of magician. I think it's you have to take it with a pinch of salt. Some of it's rooted in magic conjuring tricks, some of it's rooted in psychological techniques, some of it's rooted in hypnosis, and it's kind of just a big sort of mixed up bag of all of those things. So I tend to say magician, because then you sort of, when you say magician, people understand that you're not supposed to take it all absolutely on face value, and I think that's probably the most healthy attitude to take to it, and then from that, people kind of start to make up their own minds about what they should believe or not believe, which I think is fun.
One of our questions that came through was about how quite recently something you've started doing on TV is sort of debunking the fraudulent mediums and the so-called sort of psychic advisors and so
Yes.
on. And one of the questions was, did you ever have a moment where you thought about turning to the dark side?
Oh, this is one of the questions from the box?
Yes,
Yeah, very
indeed,
nice.
yes.
From Mr. D. Acora of Liverpool. I know who that is. No, I didn't really. A lot of magicians do. A lot of those few magicians that then found their way into mentalism, a lot of them do then make that jump to the dark side and start doing it not for real per se, but start pretending that they're real and saying that they're really putting you in touch with their loved ones and so on. In fact, there was one of the top name psychics that we all know comes absolutely from that tradition, and the woman that taught him, who absolutely herself was just from a kind of a showbiz kind of magic-y background, just taught him the kind of techniques and the way of doing it, got very upset when she realised that he was having TV shows and making out that it was all for real. So that's generally does tend to be what happens, because if you think about it, the amount of money that you can make if you say it's for real, because you immediately will pack out any venue. I don't know if you know sort of Doris Stokes, who was kind of this sort of previous generation. I feel I can talk about her safely without upsetting anybody, but she was this very grandmotherly, sort of wouldn't hurt a fly kind of image of a woman. But so she'd turn up in a town, and there'd be a stack of letters already from people saying, oh, my son died in this situation, and here's all the details in case he comes through. Because obviously what somebody like Doris wants on stage is information about someone that's passed on and how they died, so that she can then pass that off as something from the spirits. So she'd have a stack of mail. She'd then see people during the day. They'd come over. I heard this from somebody that worked on her crew. She'd have people from the town or whoever would come and see her during the day and have readings done, during which, of course, she'd get a lot of information from them. Then she'd invite them to the shows in the evening. So these shows that she did in the evening were populated with people that she just knew, a lot of this kind of information. So they're not stooges. They're perfectly... Well, they're grieving people, really, but she sort of has already siphoned off all this information, so she can just relay it back. And you see the same thing with TV psychics. When you see the TV shows where there's a guy on stage doing it, what tends to happen, I've been along and seen this, is that before they start filming, the psychic comes out and says, okay, so is there anybody here who's hoping someone's going to come through? And of course, 100 hands go up. So he's like, who are you looking for? Oh, it's my uncle who drowned in a... Okay, and what's his name? All right, lovely. Anybody else? Blah, blah, blah. And just gets all the information from people who are happy to tell him because they genuinely and sincerely believe that that person's going to come through. So then he comes out and just starts feeding that information back. They, of course, burst into tears, which is what they want for the cameras. And it's a really horrible business. So I kind of... sailing close to that wind, to use a nautical, slightly confused metaphor, close to that line, I felt that I sort of had a responsibility to kind of just tell people about that kind of world. Not because, we all believe what we want to believe, but I do think that you have to we should be able to go through life just being able to make the best decisions and having the best information so that we can make decisions. And the strange thing is nowadays that the whole thing about being open-minded is such a buzzword that it becomes overused, and you can become so open-minded that your brain falls out. Being open-minded is not about ignoring information, it's about accepting information. So for example, if you're a chef and you know that you're cooking for 200 people, well, if I put arsenic in this soup, it's going to kill everybody, but hey, let's be open-minded. Put the arsenic in the soup. That isn't being open-minded. That's just sort of being stupid. That's not working with information that you have. So to take a skeptical approach, which just means to reserve judgment until the evidence comes in, and to work with what evidence you have. So if you know that psychics can either fake it using these techniques, or maybe fool themselves using certain kind of phenomena that can fall into place. If you know that there are things like cold reading that exist, which is a way of talking to people in a way that sounds like you know everything about them, but they'll just make the information fit. And anything from fraudulent techniques to very just sort of people that just very sincerely just sort of get misguided, but they really believe it in themselves. To take all that information first and go, okay, well, is it just that's happening? And if it isn't, if it's something else, then that's amazing, and that would be an extraordinary thing to find out about. That isn't being closed-minded. That is being just how we should approach knowledge, isn't it? And how we should approach people making strong claims. If somebody makes an amazing claim that they can do something, it's not enough for them just to say, well, it's true because I know it. I believe that Father Christmas exists, and it's just because I know that it's true. You have to come up with a bit more evidence than that. If it's an amazing claim, you need amazing evidence to go with it. So I do think that's important, and I think it's important just to inform people, not necessarily to change anyone's mind, but just so that they can have the information and know how these things can be faked or reproduced or cheated, so that then they can make the best decisions as to whether or not they then want to go and see those people and give them money to put them in touch with their dead relatives.
Do you feel like, since you are sort of like TV's face of mentalism on Channel 4 and all over, that it's almost like your duty to kind of spread the word about this?
Well, I try not to be, I have to strike a balance, because I think there are people who just go out to debunk, and I think that's fine. I think you need those people doing it, but it also can be just a bit joyless. It can be a little bit sort of witless, and I think it's because debunking for its own sake isn't particularly entertaining, so you don't necessarily engage people with it, so then you end up feeling you're just banging your head against a brick wall, so you can become embittered, which then just continues the cycle of a joyless kind of campaign. I think that's a problem with just debunking. So for me, I try and keep it as a bit of a subtext, or I'll do some programs that are just on that, and with the rest of it, I try and make sure that what I'm doing is hopefully interesting and engaging first, and that all that stuff is a kind of sort of comes with it, rather than just going out on a campaign saying no, this is fake, because I think it doesn't necessarily connect with people in the right way.
I suppose like last night with your oracle routine, you specifically said at the start, I am not a psychic.
Yeah.
But then you sort of showed how you could be seen to be psychic on stage.
Yes, and of course I get a lot of people going, he is psychic. You see, he protests that he isn't, but you see, that's, yeah. Which I welcome. I'm happy with that, yeah.